I'm Susan Gilbert. I was born in Schenectady, New York in 1949. I knew I wanted to be an artist when I was 14. My mother bought me some watercolors, took me to the art store and bought me some watercolors. And I absolutely fell in love with the colors in the tubes and began to think of myself as an artist. And a few years later, I went to the Boston Museum School right out of high school, and going into my second year, a friend of mine told me about an island off the coast of Maine, Monhegan Island. So, believe it or not, we threw our 10-speed bicycles in the bus at about 1 o'clock in the morning, got out in Rockland, and rode down the peninsula and crawled into the bushes and slept overnight, and then got on the boat and came out to the island and camped for 5 days up in the ball field. And that was the last year that was allowed on the island, actually. So we weren't terribly welcome. I think a lot of hippies or young people were living up in the woods, and the island people had sort of had it. But that was my first experience of the rocky island. You know, I'd seen sandy beaches all my life before that, so it was quite wonderful. I was enthralled and kept coming back. I really tried to be a more postmodern artist. I tried to invent a statement of my own, but I really got very bored with inventing something of my own. I didn't find that I had that ability. I find myself basically inspired by the late 19th century in painting and continuing in that tradition of American Impressionism. And I think it's more what's outside of me that interests me, responding to the world that I see with my eye and my hand, and rather than an interior work which then wants to be expressed. I think I'm more enthralled by the experience of being in nature, in being outside, and in seeing. I'm more interested in seeing, and I'm interested in the history of painting as how a painting is constructed and built. So I've always looked at paintings very intently ever since I was a kid, and in the museums in the big cities that I've been to, and in the small regional museums, I've developed a huge love for American art, and I'm just very fond of that tradition, and I find myself very comfortable within the realm of American painting. First of all, I probably am drawn to surf. So if the weather is such that we have the wind and the swell and the tide and everything bringing surf to a certain part of the island, that's sort of a first choice for getting me outside. But I try to think about composition as well. If I wanted to do a painting of boats in the harbor, I'd think about the arrangement, the size of the boats. So I'd try to stand in a way that I could see those boats in relation to Manana and in relation to a certain time of day, the light that would be interesting to me. Early light and late afternoon light is more interesting to me than midday. I've just found that the place was right for me. I loved the island first. I loved every rock, every tree, every bush, every wave. It was just a very meaningful and special place for me.